Hello, everyone. My name is Tyson Allred. I'm the Uinta House Manager here at Wasatch Crest. Um, Today, I'm going to talk to you about how to master social situations sober. Um, so Wasatch Crest is a treatment facility located up here in Heber Valley. We specialize in dealing with substance use disorder issues with underlying mental health issues. We have a 20-bed residential facility. Our Mountainside campus has the residential facility as well as the Uinta program, which is an 8-bed transitional facility, which is my program. I work with the guys building life skills, transitional skills to reintegrate back into life to stop the recidivism rate, to build a life we're staying sober for. So, a couple things. I think there's no textbook response to how we navigate social situations, because even 4 years into sobriety, you get some thoughts sometimes, right? Believe me, they are few and far between. So early recovery is like navigating landmines, in my opinion. So I think the first question you would ask yourself is, why, right? Why am I going to this situation? I think alcohol and drug use was a security blanket for so long in my life that I didn't know who I was, really. Like, I didn't know how to ask girls on a date. I didn't know how to dance. I didn't know, because the social lubricant, right? Like, and so there's a lot of anxiety, insecurity going on with like building this new identity of who we become, because we're so laden with the labels that we've made for ourselves, right? Like, I am this, and so now to become something. So I think the biggest misnomer is like, don't expect it to be the same, and that's a good thing, right? Like, if you're becoming to build somebody else, like, I don't want to do the same things, and I think that changes, right? But I also don't think you got to navigate by living in fear. So there's ways to go about going to these things to where you're not, a hermit. That's not the point. That's not why I got sober. So I think alcohol and drugs had such an emotional impact on my life. It also has a physical and emotional impact. It also has a social impact, right? Because it was fun at one time in my life, or else why would I have continued to do this for so long? The reservation we hang on to is that it's still fun in lieu of all the consequences and the problems. It loses its shimmer. It's no longer fun. I'm the guy passed out in the corner, right? Like, it's becoming a problem. And so I think my first question I would always ask myself is, how important is it that I go to this event? Okay, it's a wedding, right? I need to go to a wedding. There's going to be booze there. Okay. All right. How am I going to go about it? The first stage is to set a plan, right? So I think for me, it was always reaching out to somebody. It's like, okay, sounding board, right? That's why, like sponsorship and fellowship and people, and to survey the peer group, right? Like, hey guys, this is what I'm thinking of doing. How do you feel? It has a lot of impact on transparency of like where you're at, because you're asking for advice, not because my problem is I'd always like to test my addiction, right? And I remember in early recovery, I actually wanted to go golfing one time with my old friend who's still in active addiction, but I still love this person, and maybe I could be, the person to make him want to change or whatever. I ended up going to this person's house. I sat on the couch for 4 hours while he nodded out. And I'm thinking, why am I here? Right? Why did I come here? Why am I testing myself? Because that's what we do. We subconsciously put ourselves in situations that we have no business being in. Is it possible to get through them? Yeah, but why test it, right? And I think that's the biggest question. So am I testing my addiction, or do I need to be at this event? Okay, it's a wedding. I want to go and show support. How do I do that? So for me, like, I always carry a water. I drink water a lot anyway, but it's also I got my hand full, because it's funny, right? You go to these social settings and someone wants to fill your hand with a drink. Hey, let me get you a drink. So there's kind of that fickle balance of like, how do I turn down a drink without opening up a floodgate of questions? I firmly believe your wording is important, and the verbiage I use, and it depends on who I'm talking to. If I have someone who's in active addiction use, right, they're really not going to want to hear my recovery story about, hey, I'm in recovery, I no longer do that. Come on, and then they want to push you. So have a textbook answer at the ready. Hey, do you want to drink? Nah, I don't drink. Well, why don't you drink? I just find I feel better when I don't drink. Simple as that. If they persist, right? Oh, come on, you can have one. It's like, you can flip it back on them. You can say, does my not drinking make you uncomfortable? All of a sudden, they don't really want to have that conversation anymore. You know, they kind of let it slide. So it's kind of, you know, this fickle dance of walking around of like, because no alcoholic or drug addict wants to be different from his fellows, right? That's the biggest thing. Like, that's the biggest thing that keeps alcoholics and addicts keep coming back, is that we don't want to be different from our fellows. We keep telling ourselves the lie that one day we'll be able to drink like normal people, or to, you know, and so that needs to be smashed. You know, I can no longer hold on to that belief system, which is a good thing. Yeah, I want to become something else. And so like this doctor, I have a quote, hang on, I want to read it. It stuck out to me. He said, he calls it a new social world where drinking is not the only function at a party. Former drinkers may need to search out and join this world. Dinner, work, parties, and explicitly alcohol-related events can be challenging at newly sober people, so you need to plan if you are going to attend these events. And that is really true. This whole world is available to us. And I think that's part of like fellowship, is finding your tribe of people to where I'm at an event, and whether I tell a family member, because you're going to experience emotions in these events, right? So all of a sudden I'm getting a thought or a feeling, or I'm uncomfortable, or I don't think I can do it, and I don't really have a lot of confidence. Well, those emotions are natural. You're kind of breaking a subconscious pattern of what you've always done in your life, right? And so that's to be expected. So cut yourself some slack, but there's tools to get out of that. And some of those tools I use is like, I have a plan going into it. So if that happens, there is no advantage, none whatsoever, by testing your resolve or your willpower in those situations. There's none. What are you going to prove? Are you proving something to yourself? If it's uncomfortable and you're feeling tempted, get out of there. Just go. You don't have to save face. And luckily, if you planned accordingly before, your family's going to understand. Your significant other is going to understand. The person you came with is going to understand that, hey, we need to go. No questions asked. You're out of there. If I'm uncomfortable, need to work through it, there's no one who's going to have your back like a sober brother or sister in sobriety. So take somebody in fellowship. Hey, I'm going to this event. Would you mind going with me? Transparency, right? Because I believe we can walk through all things. We can walk through all of these triggers and all of these temptations if we plan accordingly and we're honest about it. I'm having a rough day. I'm struggling. Hey, this is getting bad. We got to get out of here. Somebody I can relate to who understands, right? And that's the biggest connection we have, is these feelings are natural. You're going to run into them. And as you build a new tribe of people, they're going to show up for you. There's this whole world of like, and for me, it's funny because some events like weddings and stuff, okay, I can go to. That's fine. But if I know it's a whole world that drinking is the primary purpose, or using drugs is the primary purpose, do I really need to go to that thing? For me today, later in sobriety, is like, I don't enjoy watching a bunch of people fall on themselves and either get angry or happy based on how much intoxicated they are, or watching people line up a bunch of shots. It's no longer entertaining to me. And that is a blessing, right? Like, that's amazing to me. That's not who I am. I find joy in other things, right? Like, I find joy in nature, the outdoors, this fellowship, helping people. It's weird. It changes. I become something else. And that's exciting. And I'm also not paralyzed by fear. So all of those emotions are natural, right? And as you go through these things and you sounding board these things and realize that these tools work, that asking myself why, building a plan, making an escape plan, talking to somebody, I build confidence, you know, and as I know, like, oh, there's that thought again, I don't have to act on it because I've proven to myself that I don't have to act on it. Just the other night, I'll share a funny story. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I was making a steak marinade, and I opened a beer, and I poured the beer into the marinade. My girlfriend's mom walked in and said, "Who's having a Corona?" And I said, "Me." And she's like, kind of looked at me funny. I said, "No, I'm just making it in a marinade. Because if I have a beer, I'm going to end up doing body shots off a girl named Crystal in 3 weeks," right? Like, that's my pattern. So I know I don't drink, and I wasn't tempted by drinking a beer when I was putting it in marinade. In early sobriety, I used Coke. You know, I didn't even tempt it. I didn't even want to go near it. I didn't want to test it. So yes, you build confidence over time. Yes, you know kind of where you're at. And I know like, hey, those thoughts can still happen later in sobriety too. I have a coping mechanism I'm getting out of that. Friends are essential. Building confidence. I kind of went over all that. So I want to talk about like, I went over like the tips for turning down a drink. I think there's a time and place to share your recovery story. There's also a way to just shut somebody down who wants to keep poking and pushing and prodding you to where, you don't need that in your life. And the thing is, your true friends, I use the analogy of like attracts like, or water exceeds its own level, So if you have somebody who's, partying hard and that's the lifestyle they're living and you're like, yeah, I don't do that anymore. That person is not really going to want to gravitate towards you. It's not like, it's kind of a subconscious thing, how you can subconsciously set boundaries with these people by just your verbiage and your actions of like who you're becoming. And as you become something else, new people gravitate to you, more like-minded people, right? The like attracts like. So people who have your hobbies, your enjoyments in life, the things that you like to do now, whether it be softball. And the one thing that we live in a beautiful time right now where people are vocal about their recovery, to where there's sober softball, sober volleyball, sober bowling. I mean, there's literally anything sober and then after it, right? Hikes, painting, you name it. And the thing is like people have these events and they build a fellowship not around drinking because there's no stigma related to non-drinkers, right? Like unless drinking was your primary function for social interaction. So as you build these relationships, drinking is no longer like, oh, what? You don't drink? You're the weirdo? No, it's not like that because people don't expect you to drink if you're just going to go rock climbing. People don't expect you to drink, but the old life I lived, that was the expectation. So I think along those lines, it's kind of, self-explanatory. But my primary tips, I had a guy call me the other day. He was going to take his cousin to a meeting. And this guy has over 3 years in sobriety. We've talked many times. And he's just kind of feeling nervous about it. He's like, he's in active addiction and I'm kind of feeling off and I think I could do it. And I asked him the question. I said, well, why would you chance it? Why would you chance it? Because those are the lies we start to tell ourselves. And so what I had him do is I told him, call somebody, have him meet you at the meeting because there's that level of transparency. Go pick up your cousin, have a talk with him, take him to a meeting. Your friend's going to meet you there. So if your head goes sideways on the way there, you have a plan. If you're feeling good at the meeting, he can ride with you to take him home. I mean, if you're feeling bad at the meeting, he can ride with you to take you home. I mean, could he have probably been just fine? Yeah, probably just fine. But again, why chance it? My sobriety is important to me and things can go sideways very quickly in my head sometimes. So I think it's putting these roadblocks in place. Any safeguards I can put in place is like, why wouldn't I? Why would I want to test my resolve or my willpower? And I think that's the lie we tell ourselves. You don't need to test anything. We get this moment in this life to build something new. And in that, right, we get a daily reprieve sometimes. We're going to have bad days. And if we're walking in the fire, because I look at it like my recovery and the actions I do are like insurance premiums for when my bad day's coming, right? It's